Yeah, and what we're exploring, it's very simple in a way. We're exploring the only thing that really can be explored, and that is what seems to be here, what seems to be occurring. We could call that experience. It's it's one word. It's a word I like, but we could also say the presence of what seems to be here. It's palpable, isn't it? It's this sense of something is here. In that sense, everything is real. You know, we hear things about, oh, such and such a thing is an illusion or not really true, and another vantage on it is that everything is real. Everything that's appearing is real in the sense of it's appearing. Now, what it is another story, because what it is we could say something is here. It's just here. It's immediate, right? It's just already here. Before anything we might do to feel it, explore it, investigate it, boom, it's just the immediacy is just unmistakable, isn't it? And then consciousness does its thing of essentially, as far as I can tell, taking something that is infinite and boundless and limitless and trying to make sense of it and put it into sort of finite boxes of interpretation and categorization. But it's quite something to, you could say, in a sense, go back to the immediacy. It's not really going back because here's the immediacy. So it's just always right. It's always exactly what we're experiencing. There's nothing to really go back to. It's just right here. And it has no, this is a curious thing about what's here, is it has no findable past to it, no precedent, no what has led up to this moment. It's just, right? That's what I mean by the immediacy. It's just right here, right? There's no past. Isn't that wild? There's no before. There's just this. So it's already here. That's what I mean. And what's here is here inexplicably. We can't, there's no way to determine how this is here. How could we determine how this is here? It's so slippery that even if we were to figure out some way to determine how this particular moment arrived, you know, what led to this moment, so to speak, from some sort of cause effect, explanatory, whatever process, how is this here? That explanation just goes up in smoke because what's here isn't here anymore. So I just invite you to feel the truth of that, the reality of just how slippery this is, how ungraspable this is. The miracle of this presence, the miracle of this being, just feel that. But notice as you feel what's here, how it has this quality of, it's a curious quality. There's a rock solid kind of constancy to being, to the miracle of being, to the miracle of presence, feeling that, the constancy of it. It's just, it's indestructible. It's inviolable. It never goes away. So there's this profound sense of the stability of that, the root of that, the ground of that. It's solid. It's stable. It's always here. This presence, the presence of what is. We could call that the beingness, the miracle of being, the beingness of everything that's appearing, the sounds, the sense of whatever is here, the presence of whatever is here, the miracle, absolute miracle of it, and the persistence of beingness, the like a drone the drone that keeps playing. It never goes anywhere. It never disappears. The beingness never disappears. It never vanishes. It's never lost. It's so solid, as I was saying, in that way. It's it always remains. It always abides. It's self-abiding. We hear that term even in some of the spiritual traditions of learning to abide in this ground, this beingness. But if there's any such thing as learning to abide in this, to make this more abiding, is to discover its ever abiding nature. It's not something we figure out some way to abide in it, because we are not separate from it. It abides. It remains, the beingness, doesn't it? Any sense of going in and out of the presence of this reality is just an experience. And that experience is pure beingness, the presence of what is. So that's the thing about this paradoxical dimension of reality, you could say, or quality of it. You could say paradoxical in the sense of seemingly contradictory, but in a sense, there's no contradiction. And that is between the constancy of this beingness, the fact that it always abides and always remains. It has this ground, stability, permanence, we could say. Can't go anywhere, can't be destroyed. In that sense, it's permanent. And yet, we have this simultaneous experience of its impermanence, its instability, its ever transforming, vanishing nature. I mean, just feel what's here. You're feeling what's here, and it's not here anymore. Something else is here. I mean, it's that instantaneous, right? I mean, here we have been in a time sense together for whatever it is, 10 minutes, let's say. And feeling the beingness, right? During this time, and the constancy of that beingness. And yet what was apparently based on memory is no longer here, is it? It's no longer here. Feel that, the reality of that ungraspability. This literally lets go of itself in its very arising. Anything that we imagine we're struggling with as experience is no longer here. Literally no longer here. So we're struggling with phantoms. We're struggling with a memory of what was here, not what's here now, because what's here now is fresh, and then it's gone, and then it's fresh, and then it's gone. But it's even quicker than that. It's even more immediate than that. I've asked this question at different times myself. You may find yourself asking it too, which is, if the disappearance of this moment is so instantaneous, which it is, it's in a very, very, very real sense, nothing's ever here. Because the birth of this instant is its passing in a flash, in a less than a nanosecond. In that sense, nothing ever truly becomes something, because it's taking shape is the disappearance of that shape. So it never really comes into form, but it looks like it does. It looks like it assumes a form. But that's really it's a trick of, it's part of the magic show of the seeming continuity of phenomena over time. And this is how we create, essentially how we create knowledge. So let's say I have this idea, my knowledge that I'm sitting in a room that I've sat in many times before, my mother's old office that I'm in my parents' home. And so I have this knowledge of what this is. Now, that knowledge of what I call my mother's office is based on what? It's based on an experience of having been here before, seemingly having been here before. In other words, our knowledge is always coming out of direct experience, isn't it? So the knowledge, in other words, of what is this that I'm, or what am I even doing sitting, for example, is also based on a knowledge of some experience that is then rendered, labeled, described as sitting in a room, right? But our knowledge is if we feel what's here right now, feel what's here right now, you are feeling what's here right now. And whatever knowledge we might draw upon as a frame of reference to put this moment into some kind of frame of reference, of understanding, of knowledge, of where you are and what is happening and who you are, it is all literally based on something that's no longer here. Do you see what I mean? It's not here anymore. So I could say I'm sitting in my mother's old office, and each part of that equation, I am sitting in my mother's office, that sentence that describes some phenomena, we call that the knowledge of what's going on here, at least at one level, is all based on an experience. And the experience transcends that description. Literally every instant it transcends the description, because it's dynamic. The experience is dynamic. I've never experienced what I'm experiencing right now, and nor have you, right? So how can you know what it is if you've never experienced it? Do you see how profound that is? I'm in foreign territory in every instant, truly. I don't have a reference point, not actually. But the reference points are of, that create our sense of knowledge and the sense of things have continuity, like rooms and people and places and things, and even subjective experiences like, oh yeah, I'm experiencing some subjective state like joy or sorrow, and I'm describing some familiar pattern, right, that seems to kind of repeat at different times, and hence I can have knowledge of like, oh, I recognize that pattern. But if I'm with the specific details of what I'm experiencing, then my knowledge is maybe useful, arguably useful, but not really capturing, because our knowledge is always based on the presumption of things having continuity, in other words, to know what they are, but things don't have continuity. The presence of what is, this is the paradox. The presence of what is, the beingness of what is, has this sense of continuity, of stability, of endurance, of abiding. Like it's always here, it's always here. But it shows up as just the most incredible dynamism and ever morphing, transforming, slippery, impermanent, right? Just I'm not perceiving, my perception of what I call the room that I'm in is it's different in every instant. I'm having a different perception. So is there, I mean, I don't, it's not to me about getting in some philosophical discussion or debate about whether there's an objective room that I'm then having a bunch of different perspectives about. But how do I determine what the nature of this objective room is, apparently? Well, I can only determine it by perceiving it. But my perceptions are dynamic. So how do I get a handle on what the room is, what a room even is? I can't actually get a handle on it, not really. That's a fantasy. It's okay. I mean, there's not a problem. The only problem we could say is believing in the fantasies as being actualities. This is not finite. This is not limited. This is not lacking. This is not all of the ways we imagine it to be often. And that's all about just feeling what's actually here right now, not what we think is here, which is always based inescapably on memory, right? Your thought about what's here is based on memory, because what's here and then is thought about is no longer here. And now what's here now? Okay, well, you might have a thought about what it is and a conceptualization of it and a description of it, but now it's gone. So what's here now? Do you see? It's like the descriptions can never catch up to the reality. Reality is a shapeshifter. It just slips right through our descriptive fingers, just like that. But that's so liberating. That's so freeing, because there's nothing that we could be bound up in. And there's no one to be bound up in anything. You see, that's what I mean by freedom. That makes sense? It's just complete, unbounded, limitless infinity, dancing in all the ways that it seems to dance and appear and manifest. And that's just absolutely, I would say, from my vantage, empirical. It's experiential. You can feel that as experience. Conceptually speaking, I have all sorts of idea of the constancy of people, places, and things, their continuity, their solidity, their objectivity. But experientially, that goes up in a puff of smoke, that all those notions. Because that's not what we're not experiencing constancy and permanence and stability. And all of that can be discovered simply by feeling what's here. The feeling of what's here will reveal that it doesn't conform to any thoughts that we have about it at all. None, no thoughts. because a feeling of what's here is dynamic, and the thoughts themselves as a phenomena are dynamic, but the conceptualizations suggest that something that has some sort of enduring continuity and stability, but when in fact it can't be found experientially. Wild, huh?